Hey, this is Myth Pony, and welcome back to watching me explain how I draw my comic within. I'm pretty sure this one is going to be mostly speed paint because I'm going to be focusing on just putting in the background of all of these panels, after which I'll do lines, colors, and all the final touches that make it a comic and not just a picture. So basically the only thing I have to actually say is when I do backgrounds, I usually try to either focus on the furthest away object and then build up all the foreground in front of that, or I start with foreground specific objects and then build backwards. It's much easier for me to build from the back towards the front or towards the viewer. So, with no further ado, here's some silent speed paint. Well, that was some fun silence. Anyway, the establishing shot, the big first panel on this page, is now done. You can see it's got a lot of details, whereas the other pages don't have as much. Like, the rest of the backgrounds are more simplistic and just show where the characters are moving to and what they're interacting with. Because not every scene needs to have a big detailed background going on. In fact, it saves you a lot of time if your backgrounds are a bit more simplified. And you can see I'm going back to all the reference pages to get all the colors right for the doorways and the walls and the carpet and everything. In a moment here, I think, yep, there it went, 4 hours. I started keeping a counter of how much time had gone by in real life while I was recording these speed paints. Anyway, if you're watching closely, you might be noticing that wherever there are characters in these panels, I'm just leaving the background like choppy and unfinished because it's kind of, I don't want to sound too lazy, but it's kind of a waste of time to draw in a detailed background that you're just going to cover up with a character. So on top of making these relatively simple, I just don't draw something I know that I'm going to cover up later. Something else you'll see a lot on this page especially is that I use the square rectangular, the right angle selector tool to make straight lines and to help with making perspective. I'm not sure how many other artists do this, but it's a trick that's definitely helped me. You can see I'm making some squares and rectangles and just stretching them and shaping them into different things. That it just helps make my drawing process go a lot faster. Plus, it keeps everything, you know, anyone who draws knows that straight lines are difficult to draw sometimes, freehand. So instead of going through all of this with just a pencil and trying to make it all look neat, I can just stretch a few squares and rectangles into these shapes. And now here we go. Platform and 2 trains, little divots and doorways and windows and everything. It took a lot less time, which, if you're drawing a comic, like I've mentioned several times, now we're at 5 hours, like I've mentioned several times, it's a huge time investment trying to make all of this stuff, especially given the fact that I am not someone who works with vectors or pre-made poses for my characters. I will pre-make some backgrounds, but for the most part, everything within is drawn by hand on every single page. Like, I'd say 80% at least of every page is all hand-drawn. And stuff like this really helps me save time. And once in a while, if like this background is just a small piece of the page, it's a little glimpse inside of this train car, sometimes I will just quickly draw in something sloppy because I know not people aren't gonna hyperanalyze what's inside there. It's just an establishing shot of that's the inside of the train car, there's seats, that's it. So here's a final, I guess it's not an establishing shot, if it's a finishing shot. Unfortunately, a big chunk of the footage was lost while making that, but it's kind of just the same thing as we did on the first panel of the first page here. You get the last glimpse of what's happening in the scene and where the characters are going.